Hello and welcome back to a brand new episode of the Moran Show. CJ Strouds has been incredible. The Texans are now 2-2, and that begs the question, is the AFC South up for grabs? Today, I have Texans beat reporter from ESPN, DJ Bien-Aime, joining me right now. How you doing, man? Glad you can make it.
I'm doing good, man. You know, it's actually been raining in Houston. It was like raining kind of hard this morning, but it's already gone. So I might go for a round later. It's still puddles outside. It was raining hard for real, but you know, everything been good over here. Good vibes. How's everything going on your end?
Everything's going good, man. I'm enjoying life right now. I'm enjoying football. I just got finished yesterday on the podcast. I was debating with my co-host Riv, debating about Brock Purdy. You know, should he be in the MVP conversation? And with my former thoughts on Tua, you know, you could probably know how that went given the system that he's in. But I want to know your thoughts real quick. What do you think about Brock Purdy?
I think that Brock is a good quarterback. I think, you know, us people in the media, because you are part of the media, because you know you got a good podcast. Pick Your Side is doing this thing. You guys be going training from time to time, so like obviously y'all do good content. So, but I think we forget how hard it is to produce, regardless of how it looks. Because if you could produce, though it don't matter what the skill players around you are, you still are producing, right? And I think sometimes we take that for granted and we try to like pick apart people that are producing. And like, oh well, but he got this person, he got that person. Oh well, his arm ain't as nice as I want, or he's not that athletic. When in reality, like the numbers speak for themselves. You know what I'm saying? And I think that now is he Mahomes? Nah, but like even Mahomes' best years, he had Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. Travis is in a discussion for best tight end of all time. I think when it's all said and done, Tyreek Hill is going to be in discussion for top 10 receiver of all time. So like my point is you need help to succeed, right? Brady's best statistical season ever was with Randy Moss and Wes Welker. Randy's a Hall of Famer. Wes Welker isn't going to get in the Hall of Fame, but he'll get some Hall of Fame votes. And he was a multiple time All Pro player, right? So like Joe Montana, he had Jerry Rice the majority of his career. So I think that sometimes we get too enamored with trying to take away credit and discredit people when in reality, to produce in the NFL, regardless of what's around you, it's hard, even if you got talent. Because we saw Baker in Cleveland, right? He had Jarvis, he had Chubb, he had Odell, he had David Njoku and Austin Hooper and Kareem Hunt in the backfield with a great offensive line. That second year under Stefanski in 2021, I believe, they couldn't stay healthy. I mean, obviously they couldn't. They could stay healthy. My fault. Baker struggled, right? Mm-hmm. Baker got hurt, but he struggled overall, and he had all the pieces you need, and he still didn't get the job done. So why, when a guy has the pieces around him, we're going to try to find ways to discredit him? You know, it doesn't make that much sense to me. Like now, if you want to talk about is Brock better than Mahomes, obviously not. But like, he doesn't need to be because he has a good support system around him. And if the Chiefs went against the Niners in a regular game, I'm taking the Niners every single day of the week, and it's because Brock is going to get the playmakers the ball, and they're going to make plays, and he has a better team around him compared to Mahomes. So, yeah.
Debating the opposite spectrum of that point, I find myself in a conundrum because I understand that regardless of where I might rank Brock Purdy within the realm of quarterbacks, the 49ers will keep winning, and he will still have numbers and will get credit. You know, he deserves credit for his role within the offense. Right. And the floor for this team is an NFC championship game. So really, you're just banking on Brock Purdy playing well for two of the playoff games, the championship game and the Super Bowl. And if that happens, they could win it all. And we're talking about one of the greatest stories. Because I was thinking about it, and I was like, you know what? Right. There's not much upside. It's not hot to be like, oh, the last pick in the draft isn't a top 10 quarterback versus if you're this guy's top 5, you know, then you're talking about another type of take. But how's it like transitioning from New York, covering the Jets, to now covering the Texans? You upgraded at quarterback drastically. I wish that wasn't the case because I wanted Zach Wilson to succeed. But what's it been like just living in Houston in general?
Man, like that upgrade, it's funny, man. Like, so it's been weird. Like, there's been upgrades and like downgrades in multiple aspects. So like moving from New York to Houston, upgrade is cost of living. The food's a little bit better. The housing is way better. Covering the team, um, I would say overall, because I really enjoyed covering the Jets. Obviously, Salah was really good to deal with. Obviously, the front office really good to deal with. But I never got the locker room access, so I would call it as a wash. So, like, obviously, like I have a great relationship with a lot of players on the Texans, and I was gonna have a great relationship with players on the Jets. Um, but obviously, I didn't make it to the locker room season. You know what I'm saying? Where they actually had locker room in 2022. So I don't really know that there's like an upgrade or downgrade in terms of covering the team. I would obviously say like covering Salah is a lot more enjoyable than covering like Demeco / Nick Casario. Demeco's fine. Nick is from the Belichick tree, so like they don't really
They're not
prioritize.
open.
Yeah, so they don't prioritize like connecting with the media in that capacity, which is fine. Like it's prerogative. Like there's nothing wrong with that. But like obviously Salah did, so that made the job easier in that capacity. Where like if you had a specific question, so you could write in your story or whatnot, just to get context, like you could pull Salah to the side and get the off the record question that you use for background, and like just to fill it in. You know what I mean? Where you don't have to actually use the quote. Where here you don't really get that type of I don't want to use you don't get that type of access, which is fine. You just kind of got to work around it. Just ask players, and you can get that context. So I would
Yep.
say it's kind of even there. Now, when you talk about the quarterbacks, well, obviously last year I still had to cover Davis Mills. Davis Mills was tied for the league in receptions, so there wasn't really that much of an upgrade. But obviously CJ is a massive upgrade from covering Zach as a player. Obviously, I didn't really have much of a relationship with Zach as a person because, again, like I didn't have locker room access, so I can't really speak on Zach as a person. But CJ as a person has been great to deal with. CJ is he's a legitimately thorough dude. Like he's a man of God, man of faith, but like he really walks that, and like he really treats everybody with the utmost respect. Um, he's approachable. He connects with all of his teammates. He's great to deal with in the media. He gives us funny things to see. He says funny things, great sound bites, things of that nature. So obviously, like if I had to choose to go back to New York um, or stay in Houston, I'm obviously saying I'm gonna stay in Houston. But I will say this: the beat and the competitiveness in New York was night and day compared to Houston. Houston's a little bit more laid back in terms of like
Hmm.
the media um, scrum and the I guess the pressure that comes with the media or whatever. It's a lot more laid back in Houston. In New York, you really had to be on it every single day, like every single day. Um, you knew questions, hard questions were always going to be asked. Like players knew that, coaches understood that. Um, so like that's probably one thing I do miss a little bit. You know what I mean?
The
Because I had to,
competitiveness of it.
yeah, the competitiveness of it, the competitiveness, the professionalism of it, right? Where like if a guy has a bad game, right, like that guy has to come and face the media and answer about his bad performance. We're here, like a guy has a bad game, he can kind of sneak out or whatever. Or the
Hmm.
PR staff might not force him to speak or whatnot, which is fine. Like it's not. Obviously, quarterbacks don't talk, but like me, I'm not the guy that's like, oh, if this specific guy don't talk. He's a coward. He's soft. Da 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 da. Like I don't really care. Like he'll talk eventually. He's not gonna talk in our time, which is fine. Like, I
Yeah.
don't have an issue with that. So probably like, that's probably the only difference is that what I'm saying. Like New York, like, they understand the media dynamic and they lean into it. They don't try to run from it. Where Houston, they can kind of like try to like slither and like cut corners in that aspect.
But Houston over New York living situation
It's way better.
100% better.
Yeah, 150%. But it's not even close. Not even debatable to be honest.
Wow.
Yeah, not even debatable. You feel
Yeah.
me? Like
I live in New Jersey, so I don't even live in New York. But New Jersey, the prices are definitely skyrocketing here just because it's so close to New York. You mentioned CJ Stroud. Let's talk about CJ Stroud and just your thoughts on how he's playing right now. Watching his tape, it's unbelievable, man, what this guy's
yeah,
doing.
for sure, for sure.
He's coming from the Shanahan zone run scheme with the scheme that Bobby Slowik has incorporated a lot of motion, but it's not just the easy stuff that CJ's doing. Like Bobby Slowik is putting a lot of trust in CJ to make full field reads and make big boy throws. And what are your thoughts on just the development that you've seen from CJ week to week?
Yeah, I mean, like to just piggyback off what you said, like CJ is third in the NFL in passing attempts. Yeah, obviously he's I believe he's third. Oh, he's third in passing yards, but like he's third in passing attempts. And I go back to your point of like they're putting a lot on his plate, and he's handling it. I think that they have done a really good job of specializing in what he does very well. Obviously he's very accurate, very good at ball placement. But I think the thing I've been most impressed with CJ is when the pocket gets muddy, how he's able to navigate that, get his feet in position to make good throws. Sometimes when the pocket get muddy, some guys can't like navigate it correctly and then get their feet in position to make the throws that they need to make. Because a lot of throws come from your base. The majority of it comes from your base, right? How good are your hips? How good is your torque? How good is your footwork in the pocket? And he's really good at that and like navigating that, resetting and being able to fire dots. Obviously, the touchdown to Nico to end the game last week, like that was a perfect throw because I think the Steelers playing like two man under where like the corners would like trail. So like when Nico broke for that 7 round for that corner route, CJ had to put it out in front of Nico because then I said he can come over, but like float it with enough arc and touch over the corner's head while not allowing the safety to eventually come down and make the play on it, but hit it right in stride so Nico can go right up the seam. Go right up the sideline. And like I've just been completely impressed. Like you could tell like he knows how to like really read defenses on the fly and process quickly, eliminate the picture, like eliminate things on post snap, eliminate and get through his reads. Like what he actually needs to look at, what's just BS, and then like find where he needs to get the ball to. Like he's really good at that. The biggest trait for me for a quarterback coming out is can they process, right? And if you can, and apparently for everybody I talked to across the league, whether it's players, coaches, execs, that is something that you have to be, I don't want to say be born with, but like you have to have that innate ability to do that, right? Where like things make sense and like your brain, it can just click and make, you can react and play instinctually while just reading defenses on the fly. He does that at a high level. He does that very well. I've just been kind of like blown away. I knew I tweeted right before the season started, he had all the tools to be a franchise guy, but I didn't expect him to do what he's doing right now, where he's in company with Cam for the second most passing yards through first 4 starts of his career, passing guys like Mahomes, Andrew Luck, and Justin Herbert.
And nobody thought that CJ Stroud was going to be this good this early on. I thought he was the best quarterback in the draft. I had him in AR 1 and 2. Anthony Richardson, I favored him because of the potential, but coming out, CJ Stroud was more polished. I wasn't a big fan of Bryce Young, man. Like,
understandable.
I think Bryce Young will be a good quarterback, but it was just the size concerns. I was just, that prototype doesn't succeed in the NFL that often. For that to be the first overall pick, when you have two guys that have the traits and have the processing, because on film, Richardson processed well.
Yeah, for sure.
I thought it was a stretch. But, man, CJ has been incredible. And that route you're talking about, Nico Collins, a corner route, it like other quarterbacks would lead him to the sideline and he'd catch it out of bounds. And CJ's leading him up the field for a touchdown. There was a play versus the Colts where the center threw a bad snap and CJ had to pick it up off the bobble. He wasn't able to read the defense, and he just throws a ball to Robert Woods, leading him away from a hospital ball. And you're right, man. Like CJ Stroud, second most passing yards through 4 games. He only trails Cam Newton. Third most passing attempts without throwing an interception with 151, only behind Tua and Dak Prescott.
Right.
And just the numbers speak for itself. The anticipation skills, the arm strength, the accuracy, reading the field, the pocket movement. And that was a big knock on him coming out of Ohio State. How will he handle pressure? And he's handled pressure with flying colors, throwing with defenders in his face, throwing accurately. And Bobby Slowik, I think, deserves a lot of credit for this, for how easy he's made the game for CJ Stroud. Because versus the Steelers, we understand that the pass rush is elite. Versus the Browns, TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith completely took over the game and were able to win that game for the Steelers. But versus the Texans, we saw a lot of screen passes. We saw snaps under center, rollouts to make sure the pass rush is being negated, and that opened up all these other concepts for CJ Stroud to hit in this game. Third lowest percentage of drives ending in a 3-and-out is the Texans are at number 3. The only ones
Wow.
better are the Cardinals and the Buffalo Bills. And the Cardinals are doing some
Wow.
good things with Josh Dobbs and their first time OC there. But it just goes to show just this offense is running at full capacity. The receivers are playing great. CJ's playing great. The offensive line has been hobbled, but the backups are coming in, and they're stepping up in a big way. And the running game hasn't even gotten going yet. Like last game was Damian Pierce's first good game, in my opinion, just from a yardage standpoint.
Yep.
I
I'm with
just
you
feel
there.
like the sky's the limit for the Texans right now and just how they're playing.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. I think Titus coming back, Larry Tunsil's coming back. I mean, the offensive line that was on paper coming in to be a strength, but been decimated with injuries. Now it's finally getting healthy, and I think another thing that I appreciate about Bobby too is like he's tried to be committed to the run game,
Mm-hmm.
right, to help slow down pass rushes. Because when you commit to the run, like there's a different get off when players are trying to get to the quarterback and when they're trying to stop the run. It's a completely different feel. That's why when people say like it's like when teams know you have to throw it, it becomes even harder because now the DNs can just pin their ears back and get after the quarterback. Where CJ, every time let's say hypothetically like a team outside of the Jets, their get off is going to be the same regardless whether it's run or pass, right? Because there's a knockback, they're going to get upfield. But if you're a team that is a two gap defensive line, you can't just jump off. Like obviously you can have your get off, but you can't just rush upfield. You have to read block catch and then read the blocks and things of that nature. Where if you think it's gonna be run, but it's pass, let's say you're trying to go for that read block, but you realize, oh shit, it's a pass. All right, now I'm trying to get to the quarterback instead, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now that half a second of having to recalibrate changes the entire that might give that extra second for CJ to throw the ball. And that's why I've been impressed with Bobby Slowik in terms of still running the ball, even though they weren't having that much success, but at least being committed to it. So that can obviously slow down the pass rush just a little bit, right? Because the Steelers coming in last week, they led the league in sacks, and they got 0. They barely even got that many quarterback hits against CJ, and that plays into the fact that they ran the ball almost 30 times. Where I think Damian had 24 carries. I think Devin had probably like 5 or 6. So they ran the ball almost 30 or 30 more times, and that's only helped CJ in that capacity. Now you're getting the O-line back. So now you can run the ball with more success, and you'll be able to have CJ get that extra second to possibly hit a Nico or hit a Tank or hit a Robert or hit a Dalton Schultz. And now that thing that people haven't talked more about is now that the O-line is getting healthier, now you can use Dalton Schultz way more in the pass game. There's been a bunch of times where he's had to be the chip guy to help with the pass rush, and he's been now you don't have to do that as much. You can do it as a lesser extent. Now you have an extra weapon into the pass game.
Those are all excellent points. We saw Dalton Schultz on that trick play, the Houston special, where Singletary threw a touchdown pass to him. Just the creativity of this offense, and that's what separates a great coaching staff is the ability to adjust according to your opponent. Understanding the Steelers are a great pass rush and having the perfect game plan to make sure your quarterback isn't getting hit back there. And as a Jets fan, that's something that I am very frustrated with from a week-to-week basis is that I feel like the game plan for the Jets almost every week since I've been watching the team has been first down, second down run, and then third down pass. And it's on obvious third and long situations where a quarterback is under the most stress. It's the best to pass during first downs. That's the easiest pass. That's the easiest down to pass on because defenses don't know what's going to come, whether it's a run or a pass. I want you to speak on the defense of this team, though, because CJ has gotten a lot of hype as he deserves because he's off to a tremendous start playing the quarterback position at an A+ level. The offense is running really well. But when I look at this Texans team, I look at them as just a complete team. I don't look at them as a CJ reliant team. What do you think has been the major change from Demeco Ryans coming into this defense and lifting him up the way that he's had?
I think that he has compared to last year, the skill players here, I mean not skill players, but the defensive players here fit what Demeco wants to do better than what Lovie Smith had. Because like, for example, one of the biggest reasons why they allowed the sixth most rushing yards in a season ever was because they didn't have the linebackers that fit what Lovey was trying to do, and Lovey didn't adapt it, right? Um, because like the D line was what I talked about earlier, where it was more of a catch read type of thing to set it up for the linebackers to make the play. Now, granted, obviously there's an opportunity where you can make the play yourself, but that was more for the linebackers to make the plays, and they just didn't have the personnel that specialized in that, right? And then they ran a lot of too high on top of that. So when you run a lot of too high, you don't have you run like they ran like a fourth, they had like nickel a bunch. So they'll go 4-3, but mostly they're a nickel a bunch. You got the nickel, and you got your two linebackers hoping that they can make plays in the run game, or else you go 4-3, now you got three. But anyway, so they didn't really load the boxes a lot. Even when they did, they still struggled. But early on, obviously, too high, it makes you susceptible to the run if you don't have linebackers that can, really diagnose and fill the gaps, or really nasty defensive linemen that can, even while they being read, their read blocking being double teamed, they can hold their ground. This year, the players fit what Demeco wants to do a lot better, and they have better talent, right? You add in Sheldon, you add in Will, you add in Jimmy, right? You add in Denzel Perryman. That make it a lot easier for Demeco's system, and on top of the fact that it fits the D-line a lot better. Now the linebackers, they can kind of clean up the mess versus having to be the guy that makes the play in that where the D-line is trying to penetrate and drive the offensive line back. And obviously they're not as much too high. You'll have Jimmy Ward close to the line of scrimmage. You'll have Jalen Petrie close to the line of scrimmage. And then now on the outside, you have your cornerbacks that are either going to be on man quarters or cover three on third down situations, which that's what they want to do. That's what they thrive in. So that's why they've been able to be a lot better the last 2 weeks. They've held opponents to, I believe, 23 points, total points, right? 23. That's probably one of the best in the NFL past 2 weeks. So I would say, the system just fits the skill players a lot better overall.
The Texans right now, 44.4% pressure rate, which is the third in the NFL.
Yep.
Last year, they were 20th at 20.1%, and it speaks to the additions that you mentioned on the defensive line, Will Anderson Jr., who a lot of people were critical of the trade-up in the draft. They were critical that they traded up to get CJ and then Will Anderson and pair them up, but now it's looking like they got a franchise quarterback and a franchise edge rusher, which is two of the most important positions in football. And this year, they're 16th in EPA per play and 11th in EPA per dropback. I think the staggering difference with this team is just what they've added in the secondary. You add Jimmy Ward. Jalen Petrie was already great last year, but now you add him in now, and he's getting healthy, and that's going to help out the run game a lot because he's a great run defender. And you also, Steven Nelson, who wasn't added, but this guy is playing at a Pro Bowl level, and you've spoken about it ad nauseum in your tweets about Steven Nelson. So is there anything that you want to say about just the way Steven Nelson is playing right now on this team?
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at that. Steven Nelson right now, amongst cornerbacks with at least 100 cover snaps. He is the quarterback when they target him had the second lowest rating in the entire NFL. I forgot who's first. I think the guy that's first is Kendall Fuller for the Commanders. And that just shows how high the level he's playing, right? Like he's obviously it's early, but he's like I want to say top 10 tied for top 10 in interceptions. I think the leaders are like at 3. He's obviously at 2. He's playing at Pro Bowl level right now, and I think that if he keeps this up, he's only going to set himself up for a very lucrative market. Steven has been one of those guys that just haven't gotten the recognition that they deserve, but he's a hell of a player. He's a very good player. He just has always been on a team that had somebody that always overshadowed him, right? I think when he was with the Steelers, they had Joe Hayden for a large proportion of that. Obviously, when he was with the what they call it, the Chiefs. I don't remember who the other corner was, but he didn't get as much love. But Steelers for sure, like you had Joe Hayden on the other side, and then he was with the Eagles for a year. You had Darius Slay on the other side. So like he just hasn't got that credit and love that he deserved. Even last year, he was the better corner, but they had Stingley. So like Stingley got more attention. And obviously this year Stingley was getting more attention coming in. But then Stingley got hurt, unfortunately. He'll be back eventually. But Steve has stepped into that number one cornerback role, and he's held it down.
That interception he had on Kenny Pickett was amazing.
Yeah, special.
Yeah, the
Special.
ball tracking skills. I was like, wow, this he looks like the wide receiver on this play.
Yeah.
They added Shaq Griffin too, who was a guy that the Jaguars let go after they paid him a huge amount of money. And Tavier Thomas, I think, is also a pretty good underrated player.
Yep.
Versus the Steelers, they had 14 pressures and 3 sacks with 4 or fewer pass rushers on the field, which means that this team is able to generate pressure without blitzing, which is huge for their secondary. What's a position group that has surprised you the most coming into the season, whether it's been the wide receiver core, it's been the secondary, it's been the defensive line? What has it been?
It's easy the receivers because I've been championing the secondary. I've been championing the offensive line. So obviously the receivers, because like receivers coming in, like they were viewed as, I believe that according to ESPN, Bill Barwell, he wrote, listed the best receiver, the best weapons in the NFL from a pass catcher standpoint, and he had the Texans dead last. Right, I remember writing about that, and Demeco said, "No, this group is going to surprise a lot of people," and they have. Right, Nico, I believe, is top 5 in receiving yards. Tank, I don't know where Tank ranks right now. I can look it up because going into last week, he was top 12. Obviously, last week he only had 1 catch for 16 yards, so obviously he for sure fell down the list on that. But he's probably still in the top 25. But again, like having a guy that's top 5, and then having another guy that's a rookie that's top 25. I'm actually looking at the list right now. That just speaks to how well this receiving room has played. And again, like that shows how much CJ has help elevate those guys so they can continue to make plays. So yeah, the receiving room has surprised me the most.
I agree with that 100%. I was watching this Steve Smith video on Nico Collins and how the routes that he has the highest success rate on this year are slants, curls, digs, 9 routes, and corner routes. That's 5 routes that he's been great at. So he's developed that route tree tremendously. The past 2 seasons, he's had 400 yards receiving. He's about to break that. He's going to shatter that this year. He's going to be most likely an 1,000-yard receiver. Yeah. Tank Dell, the speed he has pops. And he's not a guy that's going to handle press coverage necessarily well, but they move him around a lot. They get the ball into his hands in space on these jet motions. Tank Dell is just an explosive playmaker. And then you have guys that are reliable. Like Robert Woods is reliable. Schultz is reliable. And even Mechie, when he comes in, he's a pretty reliable receiver as well. Right. I agree with you. The receivers, the most surprising position, because coming into the season, I thought, oh, man, Carolina, they look like they might have the better situation for a quarterback. I wasn't sure about the Texans situation, but honorable mention for me is a secondary just because of how well Steven Nelson has been playing. Before this season, I was watching a podcast that you did with Mina Kimes, and you said you're skeptical on the Jaguars coming into the year. And so far, listen, man, you deserve that praise for that take because they were getting heralded as the team in the AFC South. So before we get into the Texans and their playoff chances and their chances to win a division, why were you skeptical on the Jaguars, and how worried are you about them right now?
So I'm skeptical. Really, so I was skeptical because of their roster. I didn't think their roster was that good last year, and obviously they got hot at the end. They won some games. They got into the playoff by the skin of their teeth, right? Because they beat a Ravens team that just folded down the stretch. They caught a pick 6 on Dak where his receiver dropped the ball, and he didn't even drop it down. He dropped it and popped up, and then someone caught it and took it to the crib. So obviously, if those 2 things don't happen, right? They're out of the playoff. And it took them it came down to a Joshua Dobbs. I don't know if it was a pick or fumble that they took back to the score, and they got into that game. They won that game at the end, and Joshua Dobbs had been with the Titans for a cup of coffee at that point, and they were they were struggling with them.
And so Lawrence didn't play well in that game.
Right. So I'm all right. This team was flawed. They got to fail to win a game, whatever, but they were flawed. And they didn't do much to add to that. Their big acquisition was Calvin Ridley, who hadn't played football in 2 years, almost 2 years. And people were, they were hyping up the training camp video. I'm like, all right, look good. But I'm looking at this data. This data says when you don't play football for a while, period, no matter what position it is, that first year gonna take some time to knock off that rust. And obviously we're like, well, Kevin was younger. All right, cool. I pulled up Josh Gordon. Josh Gordon, prime example. He was obviously in his prime. He missed some time, obviously for different reasons. And obviously he was able to overcome that, but he missed time for some different reasons. When he came back, he was cool, but he wasn't a dominant force of nature that he was early on. And then we saw Deshaun, right? Deshaun missed 2 years. And when he came back, he looked very rusty, and he's still trying to shake that off now. You know what I'm saying? And he had full off seasons where he could still be with the team to some extent in practice, where Calvin wasn't, right? Because when he went away with the Falcons, he went away. He didn't practice. He wasn't really with them, and he got suspended. And when you get suspended for a whole year, you can't be around the organization. And obviously, Plaxico Burress, who was a 1,000-yard receiver before he went to prison for shooting himself in the leg, he came back and he was fine. But he wasn't that difference maker at receiver. So I'm like, all right, cool. So if their O-line is mid, the D-line can't get pressure. I saw the one guy is Josh Allen. How are we championing this team as a team that's gonna run away with AFC South? They don't look at the schedule. Still, like they already lost to the Texans. You look at the schedule going up right now. I'm pulling up right now on my laptop. Right, this week they got the Bills. The Bills are gonna throttle them. Good
the
luck.
Bills are better.
Yeah, the Bills because they won't be able to get pressure on Josh Allen. So that is a disaster waiting to happen. Because if you can't pressure Josh Allen, good freaking luck. See, they got Josh Allen coming up this week. They got to travel to face the Saints. The Saints got a great defense. They got to travel to face the Steelers. Yes, the Steelers got dog walked by the Texans. But so did the Jags. The Jags just got dog walked by the Texans. So that ain't a walk. That ain't a pick 'em. Then they got to play the Niners. It's at home, but they got to play the Niners. The Niners are better than them at every single position outside of quarterback. Mm-hmm. That is it. Like the Niners are better than them at every single position. So if you think or not the Jags are going to win, you just saying that because you think they got a quarterback. And people view quarterbacks like it's basketball, where like if you got that guy. You can win games. Yeah, you can win games, but that don't mean you're going to always make the playoffs. We seen that with Justin Herbert in them. All right, so they got them. Then after the Niners, they got the Titans. Then they got the Texans again on the road. Then they got to play the Bengals. Obviously, that's going to be the battle of the two disappointment teams. But then they got to go and they got to play the Browns on the road, who have a great defense. Then they got to play the Ravens again. Then they got to go play the Bucks, who are surprising people. Then they close the season out with the Titans. This team not making the playoffs, man. That team not making the playoffs in my eyes. They're not making the playoffs when you lock in the fact that the skill players aren't as good as we thought. Trevor's good, whatever. The O-line is going to get a little better when they're going to get some guys back. The D-line can't get to the quarterback. And their secondary, in terms of stopping the pass, ain't that great. So, yeah, man, I don't see it. Like, I don't see how they're going to make the playoffs this year. They have to win the division, but they've already lost a game to the Texans. They're 1-1 in the division, so they got 4 more games to go in the division. Are they really about to go 4-0? Nah. So they finish 3-3. The chance you winning the division is very low. Like I remember, hitting up our stats department, and obviously when I was getting ready for the meeting of this podcast, I didn't get the information in time. But like most teams that don't finish with a winning record in a division don't win the division. It's very simple as that. If you don't win if you don't have a winning record in the division, you're not going to win. It's very unlikely for you to win a division. So I just think when you look at that schedule, it's going to be really hard for them, because they're 2-2 right now, for them to go, because there's 13 games left. They're going to have to get to at least 10. It's very hard for me to see them going 6-4 the rest of the year. Is it 6-4? No, my math is super off.
They played 4 games, so that means it would
13
be
games,
17 game season, 13 games left.
So they got to go what, like
probably 13? Like 8-3.
Nah, that put it at 11. So they got to go 8-5. Yeah, 8-5. Yeah, so they got to go 8-5 the rest of the year. When they got to play the Titans twice, the Niners, the Browns, the Ravens, the Bucks, the Texans again. On the road to the Steelers. Hey man, and they gotta play the Bills.
Yeah.
Hey man, you could write their obituary right now, man.
Hey, listen, that's a great take. And this division, for the last 2 years, I would say, has kind of been up in the air because last year we came into the season, the favorites were the Titans, and then with the Colts getting Matt Ryan, I had the Colts winning. I thought Matt Ryan would be better and Frank Reich would
Right,
be better. They
right.
just fell off a cliff. But then the Jaguars surprised everybody. The Jaguars were that team where we're like, oh, we're just hoping Lawrence is better year two, but we don't expect them to make the playoffs. And then they started hot. And then this year, we see the favorite in the Jaguars. They start off slow. They don't look good. And it's not even just their record. They just don't look good on tape.
Right,
Like
yeah.
Calvin Ridley is dropping passes, and it kind of makes me regret drafting him in fantasy so high. I drafted him like like in the 5th round, which at the
that's
time
high.
I guess wasn't that great a value, but whatever. I just was really hopeful that with him and Trevor Lawrence, he would make it work. And Lawrence has put the ball into places for him to make things happen. He just hasn't made things happen. And the defense is a huge concern for me, as you've mentioned. We're looking at two teams now in the Texans and the Colts that they have the quarterbacks. The scheme around these teams are being executed at a great level. And the Titans kind of feel like the old dog at the park that kind of just can't. They don't have the offensive firepower to keep up with these teams. So when you look at the AFC South, are you telling me that you think the Texans are going to win this division?
I'm still leaning with the Titans, but I'll say this: if they enter the bye 4-2, then I think they'll win the division because they got the Falcons, then the Saints, then they got a bye, right?
They can win those 2 games,
right? So and they got the Falcons on the road, Saints at home. So they're 4-2 going into the bye. This is who they have afterwards: Panthers, who haven't won a game yet. They got the Bucks. The Bucks are a good team right now, so that could be tricky. They got the Bengals, who are still struggling. They're 1-3 right now. They got the Cardinals, who are 1-3 right now. They have the Jags, who they just, rolled over. Then they got the Broncos, who just got their first one, but they got terrible defense. Then they got the Jets, who they can't score over 20 with Zach, no matter how many interceptions the defense gives them. They can't score over 20. So regardless of how bad CJ may look against that defense, because that defense is phenomenal, it's going to be a game because they might not get over 20. Then they got the Titans at home. They got the Browns at home. Then they got the Titans on the road. Actually, yeah, they got Titans on the road, whatever, who they've beaten on the road the past couple of years. They got the Colts at home. So if they go 4-2, I think it would be very fair to say that they're going to probably win the division at 9-8.
I am leaning towards the Texans winning the division because of what you mentioned, just the strength of the schedule. I look at the teams, Falcons and Saints, they could easily be 4-2 at the bye. Then the 4 games after that, the Panthers, they should be favorites. The Buccaneers have been playing great, but they face the Bucs at home. And I think the Texans are better than the Bucs. I think they're a better team than them, regardless of the Bucs start. That can be a win, but even if you don't think that's a win, let's just say that's a loss just to make things fair, right? So currently we're at 5-3 with the Bucs loss. At the Bengals, I'm expecting the Bengals to bounce back.
Right.
So I'll chalk that up as a loss. That's 5-4 versus the Cardinals. I think that's 6-4. But if we are just going off of what we feel right now, this Texans team versus this Bengals team, if they were to face this weekend, I think the Texans beat them. So that's if we're counting on the Bengals to be great, and I counted the Bucs loss, but they could win. They could win against the Bucs. It's not crazy to say this team could be like 7-3 heading into Week 11, and I just trust this team to make the playoffs. I think CJ's playing at that great of a level. The receivers have been playing great. The defense, Demeco's just going to continue to get the best out of these guys, and they'll get healthier. As of right now, I'm very much leaning for the Texans to make the playoffs, and I think it would be an amazing story just how fast they've turned around this rebuild.
Yeah, and then then I can go on a rant about all the nerds that were questioning them about trading, your first round pick for the following year for Will Anderson, because they really got crushed before it was that, and I think that sometimes people in our industry, they get too enamored with the hypotheticals. And and not realize, they just got a really good player. And again, like I think sometimes when we talk about teams, we talk about them based on the logo, what logo they have, right? Like We're giving the Bengals the benefit of the doubt. Why? Because we've seen them play pretty well recently, or past few years. So we just assume that they're going to get back right. But what if they don't, right? And with the Texans, people have seen them struggle for the past couple of years, 2020, 2021, 2022, when they've gone on a combined record of, I believe, 11 something and something. I think it might be like 1138 and 1. I think that's a record over the past those 3 seasons. People just assume like, oh yeah, that's the Texans, da 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 da. But like when I was looking at their roster, I was like, oh no, they got a really good offensive line. They're gonna have a good tight end. They're gonna have a good run game, a good running back room. They have a good D-line room. They have a great secondary. The question was more on linebacker and receiver and how the rookie quarterback was going to look. So, like, I was like, the talent is there. Like, they have what they need. So, yeah, they just got to handle business. You know what I'm saying? And, they're a young team, but they have a lot of veterans, right? Like, yes, Tank's young, and Nico's young, and CJ's young. But Laramie been in the league since 2016. Titus been in the league since 2019. Robert's been in the league. Robert Woods played against Demeco Ryan. So, I don't think people realize
so he's been in the league for a long time.
He's been in the league for a long time. You know what I'm saying? Like, Dalton Schultz has been on teams that are expected to make the playoffs, right? Yeah. So he has that veteran leadership in that capacity. Jimmy Ward was just in the NFC Championship game. Steven Nelson, I just realized last year was the first time he missed the playoffs, right?
Wow.
Sheldon Rankins was on those Saints teams that were making deep playoff runs. Jerry Hughes was on the Bills. So he saw the Bills where the Bills were bad, good, when they made the playoffs that 1 year, 2017, Tyrod Taylor. Bad again, good, Super Bowl contenders. He's been on those teams, right? So, like, you have enough guys across the board in every position room that is, been on teams that have competed for the playoffs. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised that you think that. I mean, hell, Case Keenum in the quarterback room, like, he was on that Vikings team that went to the NFC Championship game, So, they had, like, I don't anticipate them, smelling themselves too much because, like, 2-2 is only 2-2, and 2-2 could easily turn into 2-4. Mm-hmm. And now we're having this discussion where it's like, oh, never mind then. You know what I mean? So, like, they understand they got to handle business.
Now, you threw it straight at the Jets, man, with Zach Wilson and the 20 points thing. You don't think listen, we saw the Sunday Night Football game. You don't think Zach Wilson's turning a little bit of a corner where all of a sudden, it just clicks for a quarterback, and now we're seeing a different quarterback moving forward. He got the Broncos this weekend. I'm just saying.
Let me look at something right quick. Atlanta Falcons. Hold on. Let me see. Atlanta Falcons 2021. Right. So I know you remember that game famously.
I do.
You know
the
how
London game.
Yeah. So hold on. Let's see if I can pull it up. Oh, I can't find it right now. But you know what game I'm talking about. The game in London, Atlanta Falcons, that season, like, their defense was not that good, right? Mm-hmm. So, obviously, week 1, they allowed 32 to the Philadelphia Eagles. Week 2, they allowed 48. Week 4, they allowed 34 to the Washington football team, who I believe might have had Tyler Heineke at quarterback that year. They beat the Giants, 17-14, but that Giants team stunk.
And that's Zach off the Titans game, right?
And that's Zach off the Titans game where he went crazy against the Titans. When the Titans had the Titans were a good team, they had a number 1 seed, so I've seen it before, right? Where Zach go crazy, right? He make you think, okay. Then he go against a terrible Falcons defense, and the Jets score 20 points, and I think the last touchdown was when the game was basically over, right? So I've seen this happen before, right? Where, okay, let's go to Zach Wilson against the Tampa Bay Bucks, right? They almost beat, remember, they almost beat the defending champs in the Buccaneers, right? Zach played a really good game, but then, he has the QB sneak at the end on fourth and two, where they're not able to get into the end zone. But you're like, oh, wait, Zach played really good. He had 2 touchdown passes. He was really good in that game. The next week,
that's the Bills one?
They went to Buffalo.
Oh, yeah, that was horrific.
They had a franchise low. I'm trying to look at the total. 53 yards. Wow. Franchise low, 53 yards.
So you're telling me that versus the Broncos defense that just let up 70, just let Justin Fields had a career game, the odds are showing that Zach Wilson is going to go into that on the road versus that defense, and he's going to stink it up.
I don't know if he'll stink it up because it looks like the Broncos defense is a get right game.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be shocked if he does go and stink it up because that's on brand. Is it not? Is it not on brand for him to play really good one week and then the very next week play like hot garbage?
It is very on brand.
It's on brand. So
I'm hoping for something different. I'm hoping for something different.
You know what's really sad about the whole Zach stuff is like people treating him like a Make-A-Wish Foundation kid. Like,
yeah,
oh my God, Zach looked fine against the Chiefs, even though at the end he fumbled the snap and cost them the game. Like, granted, like I'll say this: if Zach continues to look like how he did against the Chiefs, now that's a whole different discussion. But am I banking on it? No, I ain't banking on it because again, like y'all got 2 interceptions. Yeah, we're holding Mahomes. Y'all holding Mahomes down. Run game was working, and y'all still only scored 20 points.
Yeah, a lot of things went right for us. I'm hoping that maybe this is the corner that he's turning, but like you said, the odds aren't in favor of that happening. Now, I want to talk about this, and then we could end this podcast. I really appreciate you coming on, giving me this much time.
Yeah, for sure, brother.
The Miami Heat struck out on Dame.
Okay.
I know you're a Heat fan. You're a Miami Dolphins. You're a Miami Dolphins fan. You're a Miami Heat fan.
He was like, all right, I gotta. He talked bad about my quarterback. I gotta talk bad about his Miami Heat team. Nah, fair. Go ahead, fair game.
So you guys lost out on the Dame sweepstakes. You lost out on Drew. There's still one star out there in James Harden. I don't know if the Miami Heat will go and target him, but just what are your expectations now coming into the season that you guys didn't land Dame?
My expectation now is just to make it to the second round, and just kind of go from there. I think that they still have good internal pieces, right? Like the kid out of UCLA, there's some talent there. The kid I'm really excited to see is Jovic, the first round pick from last year. He has some skills, 6'10", 6'11", stretch 4, who can handle the ball. Because the Heat, the one thing they did lack a lot last year was size, which is why like the Kevin Love move made a lot of sense, and like you saw it kind of help when they were playing like the Knicks or they were playing like the Bucks, where you had some bodies down there. Obviously, like Kevin Love is a dinosaur, so obviously like, you couldn't have him out there too long. So I'm interested to see how he looks, but like I can't honestly objectively be like, oh no, this team will go back to the finals, it's the conference finals. How? Like how they gonna beat? Like how they gonna beat the Bucks, right? Because they're gonna mess around and get matched with the Bucks. They're not beating the Bucks now with like you add because the Bucks kept their main pieces and they added Dame. So like like the Heat got I don't want to use the word lucky. That's not the word we want to use. But like a lot of things went their way, right? Giannis missed a couple games with the back injury, and they took advantage of that. Shout out to them. They took advantage of that because he missed most of game 1 and he missed 2 and 3. So they took advantage of that. But remember, he came back game 4. Like Jimmy Butler had to turn it to Michael Jordan for them to come back when they were down by like double digits. He had to turn it to Michael Jordan, and then again he had to turn to Michael Jordan again in game 5, where it was more like the Bucks folded and Jimmy Butler took advantage of that. Like that's just not going to happen with Dame, right? Like Dame is not going to allow them to choke the way that they choked in some of those instances in game 4 and